Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Military Mondays. If you and I don't know each other, please reach out to me. I'd love to get to know you. I am a retired major from the Air Force, and I am also the co-founder of Life's Real Currency with my husband, Michael Sanchez. And we help businesses retain those precious clients so they don't end up out the back door to their competition. And better yet, we can help you find new clients. So with that, every single Monday morning, I bring you Military Mondays. Why? Because I served in the service and I want to highlight veteran or spouse owned businesses so we can get the word out about them. And today I have a rock star on. She's actually a badass. I met her networking, and I'm just so honored to have her on this morning. Welcome, Laurie, to Military Mondays.
Hi, it's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So why is Laurie on Military Mondays? Let's talk about Laurie's background and what she's up to and what her husband's up to.
What was the question? Did you actually ask the question? Am I just introducing myself?
Background.
My husband is active or was active duty for 10 years. And he has been, he is an A-10 pilot, and he was commissioned in 92. So he graduated from Montana State University and commissioned in 92. And then he waited a year to go to pilot training. And that was at the Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training down in Wichita Falls, Texas. So at Shepherd Air Force Base. And then he did his fighter lead-in there. And then we did the A-10 training, moved to Tucson, had our first son during pilot training, not really recommended or planned or, but you know, we got married when we were 20. So we got married in college, met in high school. So we got married in college. And so we've been, you know, we had been together for 4 years before our first son was born. And then we went to Tucson for the A-10 training. And then his first active duty assignment was at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina. So
I was going to say a lot of moving around, moving parts, and having a baby during that.
Yep.
Talk a little bit too about what it's like to be a spouse. And I happen to know that you gave up your career to be a military spouse and a mom. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I have a teaching degree. So I was a PE and health teacher and a coach, a basketball and volleyball coach. And I did teach for 1 year during that time when we were waiting to go to pilot training. The school that in Bozeman, or at Montana State, where we had, I did my student teaching. One of their teachers went on a sabbatical, so I just slipped in there and taught for a year, taught high school PE and health. And then once we started moving around, I had always planned on being a professional. I was going to be, my mom was the breadwinner of our family. So she was, you know, a working mom, and that's just how I grew up. That's what I was going to do. And then I had my first son, you know, at pilot training, and then we moved to the next base, and I had planned on substitute teaching, at least, you know, getting my foot in the door and doing all of that kind of stuff. And I couldn't hand my little guy over to anybody. So honestly, it was more the mom thing than it was the military thing. But you know, we didn't make first lieutenant, you know, second lieutenant, then first lieutenant, not a lot of money, but we made it work. And I don't regret really a second of that, because I got to raise both of my boys. And then later, you know, as they grew older and we parked it here in Boise, Idaho, he is now with the Guard unit here. He is full-time, has been full-time since 2002. And so we've been here for a long time now. So I integrated myself into the school system. I kept myself super busy. I was, the art mom, the room mom, I was in my kids' chili all the time. And I wasn't the helicopter mom, I was just present. So, I mean, they'll be the first to tell you that I was not, overbearing and overpowering, but they were, I really enjoyed being able to do that. But as they, moved on, I'm not going to substitute at the junior high level. That's kind of nuts. So like, no. So then I found my calling, being a personal trainer. So I decided to go that route, the health route, and then started studying up a lot on the nutrition side of things, and found my niche doing that instead of the personal training. So
Awesome.
That's my little run. Yeah.
That's awesome. Before we move to the next thing, which is what you're doing today, the personal training and health coaching, what words of advice would you give a military spouse, or maybe it's a young couple and it's somebody considering marrying a military person? What, because it could be a guy too, not just a woman. There are women who serve. So what piece of advice would you give them as a spouse role?
Oh, geez. For us, what really worked for us was just an open line of communication, I think. I really enjoyed what I was doing with my boys. I really enjoyed the stay-at-home part. The thing that was the hardest, I think, for me was that I hung my value on what I would get done that day. And so if I got stuff done that day, and that was my own doing, that was my, my childhood upbringing, programming kind of stuff. So nothing that my husband is super appreciative all the time of everything that I was doing, but I just had this underlying, if I didn't vacuum today, then I'm worthless. If I didn't, have the house clean when he got home, that was just my upbringing. And I put that all upon myself. Honestly, I really did. And so I would just have that open line of communication, and with whatever it is that you really, really wanted to do. If you wanted to go out into the workforce and be a working mom or a working spouse or whatever that is, just have that open line of communication, knowing that you have value no matter what it is that you're doing. But the other one would be the thing that I learned because he deployed several times. And so I was a single parent for several months at a time also. And in 2003, the whole shock and awe, they were supposed to be over there for a month and they ended up being over there for 6 months. So, and then again, he went over again as we were stationed here for another 6-month thing. So it was just being able to adapt. And whatever it is that the military offers you to be able to have that communication, use it. That's what my advice to you would be. Now we have a program called the Yellow Ribbon Program. I don't know, are you aware of that?
I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah,
but I don't
so
know.
We would have had that. Yeah, so wish we would have had that, to know the resources that you have available to you, but also, I mean, it's a requirement now, pre-deployment and post-deployment. And my son was actually deploying last year, and we went to my husband had to anyway, because he's the commander there. And so, but my son was able to take another person, and I was like, I'll do it. So we got to go to that. It was in San Diego. And we got to go to that, and it was so valuable. So whatever resources that the military has for you to be able to utilize, use it. That's what they are there for. So, and then you can even find the other things that in the community that help military members as well. So a lot of times we're just not aware of those things. I so wish we would have had that opportunity when we were going through all of that. So it's a golden opportunity.
I was I was going to say, one of the things that I've heard from many military spouses, especially young military spouses today, is yes, plug into the resources, but you just said you don't always know the resources that are.
Yeah.
And so I would say the one thing to plug into is the spouse groups,
Yeah.
because somebody in the spouse group knows of the resources generally that are out there and can plug you in. And it's a community of people that can be there to support you when your spouse is deployed, and to be able to pick up and it's just a different community. When a spouse is deployed, a lot of times they deploy as a unit. And when the moms can all, or moms and dads, the spouses can all get together and support each other, it's huge. So
Yeah. I
definitely.
definitely utilize that as well. Yeah. And there's the people, yeah, that are in that community, you know, it is a, but you know, on active duty, it's much different on active duty than it is in the Guard. But I do remember on active duty, it was such a wonderful unit, you know, and a lot of times it wasn't even just people that were in our squadron or it was people on our street, you know, because we lived on base, you know, and I actually really enjoyed that. We were in Alaska for, you know, 3 years, 4 months and 17 days. Not that I was counting it all, but we were in Alaska, and like, so my second son was born in North Carolina at Pope Air Force Base, or actually at the Army Medical Center down there. And then we went to Alaska, and he was like 3 weeks old by the time we got up there. So he was just teeny tiny little guy. And that was just a shock, now having another child plus this, and now it was October. I mean, when we got there, and so there's snow there in October already, and then it just drops, gets cold, stays cold forever and ever and ever. And so, and we had to live off base, and it was super isolating. And then when we finally got on base, it was just like, oh, yes, you know, whenever you do that, you go, you know, from place to place to place, you kind of already have a ready-made family there with you. And you have to learn to adapt, because you're not going to like everybody, but you have to learn to adapt to that, you know? And
Yep.
so, and pivot and move and integrate and things like that. And so when you can learn that kind of a skill, that's you know, that will definitely help you.
Awesome. I heard you say something, and I want to back up for just a second, because there's very few people that I interview that go from active duty to Guard. So I was a reservist. I went from active duty to reserves, but you said it's very different in the Guard versus active duty. So for just a minute, let's highlight the differences, or how what you would recommend for a Guard family, a Guard spouse versus an active duty, because obviously.
Well, are you talking about the transition part of it, or just, you know, because there's, you know, if somebody is in the Guard here, yeah, it's actual, and it has, like, the Guard is like, a lot of the people that are here, they have their families are still their family. They grew up here. You know what I mean? This is their hometown. They graduated high school here. They never left. And so for a lot of the people that are in that unit, it was, you know, I'm an outsider and you're trying to get into, you know, and I was trying to treat it like active duty. And so, you know, we had First Fridays, everybody goes to the club. We have, you know, there really is not a spouses group in the Guard, because it's not as necessary as it is in on active duty. And so that transition was difficult for me, because I didn't have a ready-made family when I got here, because everybody's doing their own thing all the time. They have their cousins here, and their aunts and uncles, and you know, their whole family is here. I didn't have anybody here. And so that's why I went into the school system. So I just adapted, went to the school system, and found my family with the teachers there and the other parents and things like that. So it's definitely something that's very, that's one of the bigger differences.
I guess I never thought about that because reserves is different than guard, obviously. And my son-in-law was guard, but he joined the guard in upstate New York and he moved here. So he wasn't, again, he wasn't where his family was. So I never thought about that. So that's a good perspective to keep in mind, that guard doesn't, not that you don't need your military family, but it's different in that you already have your family locally generally. So
yeah, well,
community.
we do have people that don't live here that just come here. So some guard members do. I think the biggest difference between guard and reserve is just where the money is coming from, honestly. Because we do have full-time people, like my husband is full-time. He's been full-time since we got here. We do have a lot of full-time people. He doesn't have an outside job. It's just here. But we do have a lot of people that have that outside job. And then this is their weekend thing. So they come on the weekends, but the pilots will have to integrate, every now and then, because they have to keep current with their pilot stuff.
Right.
Their flying currencies and stuff. So, so they pop in and out during the month, but it's the one weekend a month kind of thing.
Right.
So that's really not that much different than, guard and reserve as far as the time being here, or the people that are here, full-time people, part-time people. We have both of those. So.
Cool. So let's get into, we have a few minutes left, and I definitely want to get into what you're doing today, because Laurie has her own business today. She talked about physical train or PT and health and nutrition. I'm like, what are the other words I'm trying to say? But it really, in all of my conversations with Laurie, it really all comes down to mindset. So let's talk about that a little bit, Laurie, because we had some good conversations about, yes, it is about diet and exercise and all that, but really, if you don't get your mind right, none of the rest of it works.
None of the rest of it's going to work. Right. Well, I've never been, super overweight. But, just being a girl in high school and being a little bit bigger than anybody else, you're going to get the body image issues, and I grew up with my mom always being on a diet. And so, and most of my extended family, is overweight and always has been, and has always been on a diet. And so, the rest of my family doesn't really look like me. And so currently, but as I was growing up, it was just like, well, that's inevitable. That's how it's going to be. I'm going to be on a diet because that's just what life is, right? And so I did have significant body image issues, graduating high school and things like that. I did the whole starvation thing when I went to college because I was super afraid of the freshman 15, so I pretty much starved myself the first year of college and got down to like 110 pounds, just itty bitty, tiny little thing. And then of course it came back on because and then having babies and things like this, doing the mom body thing. And then you join a gym and then you'd go for a few times, and then you'd quit. And then just the normal process. It's the normal process. Or the normal process. But when I turned 40, I'm 52 now. And when I turned 40 is pretty much when I just decided that I needed to do something, consistently for myself. Now my kids are getting up there and I'm done, they're kind of self-sufficient on their own. And now I just need to do something for me. And so started going to our little rec center gym with a neighbor of mine. And our motto was just do it before you don't. So we would get up at 5 a.m. and just go, no matter what. We'd be sick. It'd be raining. It would be cold. It would be, and even if we stayed there for 10 or 15 minutes, we did it no matter what. And so then I joined a gym and started to ask about being a personal trainer because I didn't really, it was go be a full-time teacher And PE teacher, PE changed over those few years. There's I would be in 2 or 3 different schools. And so I decided to do the personal training. And that's when I got into bodybuilding. So I transitioned and counted every calorie, completely obsessed with food, completely obsessed with working out. Not a day, not a moment in a day that went by that I didn't think about food, what I could have, what I can't have. And then I threw that onto my clients. Here's how many calories you need to eat. Here's your macronutrient breakdown. You can only have this much protein, this much carbs, this much fat. Follow this list, do this. I just went, here, do this. And then they wouldn't do it because it's not their diet. It's not their plan. It wasn't their idea. They didn't come up with it. It was me giving it to them. And so, and then that just jacked up my relationship with food. And it jacked up my relationship with my body. At 8% body fat, I still hated what I looked like because I wasn't good enough. I was still not good enough. And I used that whole mentality from when I was little to here, and so that programming of not being good enough and comparing myself and that self-worth that I had trouble with, even as a military spouse, that just kept me from being happy. I was never happy. At 8% body fat, I still wasn't happy. So I quit the personal training part of it. I did 7 shows in 9 months doing my bodybuilding competition days. And then I had to get help. I had to get help because it sent me into a spiral of constant anxiety, fear-based depression, thoughts of hurting myself, all sorts of stuff. So I had to get help. And then what I learned in my counseling, honestly, I started to use on my clients with rewiring my brain. I had to rewire my brain of how I thought. And because our thoughts drive our choices, period. And so when we change the way we think about things, then we can change what we do, and what we do will change what our bodies look like.
Nice.
So that's
I love the quote, just do it before you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That is good for anything, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's business, whether it's, mom, whatever it might. It's sort of like eat the frog in the morning, eat.
Right. Well, I think people they wait around to be motivated. They wait for something, to spark them to do something. I do it. I'm not, to sit down and write a blog. I feel like, I got to be in the mood. I have to be in the zone. I have to be in the, you know what I mean? And so I do it too. I talk myself into that. I use that same old story that I'm not a writer, right? But it doesn't matter if you are or you're not. I'm writing. That makes me a writer. When you go to the gym and you're walking on a treadmill and you're getting into shape, when you start to talk to yourself like, well, I'm not very fit. I'm not very, so I can't, or I'm not an athlete. Well, no, yeah, you are. You're at the gym, you're doing something, so you are an athlete. Just start talking to yourself like you are that thing, that person, and then you become that. So
yeah. It's amazing when we start in all the personal development we've done in the last 10, 11 years, right? As if you want to be making 6 figures a month, if you want to be making 4 figures a month, 5 figures, whatever it is, you want to be traveling the world, even if you've never traveled the world, if you say, I'm traveling the world,
yeah,
happens. Like the universe conspires to give it to you.
Right.
So I love it. It definitely is that self-talk. And I like to tell people, and you probably teach your clients this, I teach people in the morning and at night to write down things that you're grateful for, or I am this, or I am
gratitude and affirmations. Yes. Yep. My courses. So I've written a couple of courses, and that's like, it's almost it's a requirement. You know, if you're going to work with me, and we have to rewire the mind, you've got to start talking to yourself differently, because that's what it's actually been scientifically proven.
Yep.
You know, that different connections in your brain, because our emotions, our bodies, we embody what it is that we are feeling. Because our body, that's what a feeling is. When you get, when you get afraid of something, your body reacts, right? Well, your brain really is the thing that's releasing the chemicals for that to happen. And when it does that, it rewires things. So as you do that, it's not like there's no giant aha thing that happens. There's no giant aha moment. There's small, subtle changes as you go. And then sometimes you'll just look back and go, wow, that used to really bother me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that might happen, but then you'll go, huh? And then you'll move on and do something do something else. So that was the rewiring that I was doing with my, counseling sessions. It was turning on and turning off certain things and turning on other things to be able to transition that. Because when you're like, the whole guilt about food, we get all of this guilt about eating something, and then that actually chemically alters your brain. And we have to shut those things off, shut that chemical reaction off in order to actually have that change happen. Because really what we want to do is lose weight and make it easy.
Right.
We want it to be easy. This is how it gets easy. You don't want the Cheetos. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because right now you just really want the Cheetos.
Yep. And when you don't want the Cheetos, I know, because Laurie and I have talked.
Right.
My husband and I have been on a health journey for the last almost 2 years now. And it's amazing how much better you feel. It's those small incremental things. And then all of a sudden you look back and it's like, wow, like,
what? Right.
We didn't see the weight coming off. We didn't see,
right.
And my husband would say, yeah, no, I haven't, I don't look like I'm any smaller. And then I'd show him 2 pictures side by side. He's like, wow. And people would say, Mike, what are you doing? And it was just, and it's a mindset thing. We just do it before you don't. We started at the gym every single morning. We'd wake up. The first thing we did was we went to the gym 7 days a week. Then COVID hit and that went away, but we're working on getting back to doing that. But yeah, it's a mindset thing. And we went, whether we were sick or not, unless we were really sick, we would be at the gym, even if we only did a little, we were there. And
it's the habit that you have to get back into. You know what I mean? Like I just went through a little run with breast cancer, actually. I don't know if did I tell you that?
Yes.
Yeah. And it was, wasn't supposed to lift anything, wasn't supposed to do anything, but the going to the gym, that's just who I am. It's just what is now. It's odd not to go. It's odd not to move my body somehow. So, but it didn't always used to be like that. I had to make that happen. And like, I'm not supposed to go, I'm not supposed to do something, but 4 days later, I go because that's just what I do. I don't want to get out of the habit of that being who I am. What I did there was completely different, but I just went. I wasn't there for as long and I didn't do what I normally do, but I have to keep the habit at the same time. For me, anyway, there's, but I will always tell my excuse if I don't work out in the morning, then I'm not going to work out. But that again is a story. I can work out at 2:00 in the afternoon. I just don't want to.
Right. Yes.
So I set myself up to be able to do the thing that I want to do.
Right. Yep. It's those the stories of your mind become the stories of your life,
Yes. Oh, yes. Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to steal that one. You can have mine. I can have yours.
You can have mine. I'll take yours. So we need to wrap it up. We'll have to have you on another time because we probably could talk for hours.
Oh, gosh. I got a lot. Yeah.
Is there anything that you haven't shared that you'd want to share with the audience?
I think that the whole dieting industry is really set up for people to fail. Because if it doesn't become your idea or the thing that you have come up with and create, then you're not going to stick with it. So if like there's, keto is a big thing that's out there right now, and or low carb or slow carb or whatever. So, but if it's not something that you believe that you can sustain for the rest of your life, and if you haven't really come up with it and created it yourself, then I encourage you to do that work. And not necessarily if you want to hang on, I gotta plug my it's like beeping at me.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's not going to be something that you have come up with and you've created, then then it's really much more difficult to stick with it. If you want to count the calories just to get an idea about how many calories or what it is in the food that you're eating as an education purpose, instead of as I can't have because of. When we start to talk like that, then it's deprivation. Then you're going to feel like you're missing out on that. And then all of these other things will creep up. And it's that's that old programming that we have to start shifting. And so I encourage, what I always have all of my clients do from the beginning is write the food that you're eating down, not measured, not, and then and we're not counting, just writing it down, and then how it makes your body feel, not how you feel about what you ate, or you could say stuff like, it's not worth it. I had that and I feel like this, so maybe that wasn't worth actually having it. And that will start to help you figure out what your diet should be like. It helps you pay attention. When you start paying attention, your body has all the answers.
Yep.
So, and I leave you with one little tiny quote that I've been using a lot lately is we take care of what we love.
Yep.
And if you begin to love yourself no matter what, then having that body positivity, body self-love. So I work on that daily. I work on that all the time too. Because I came out of this, pretty strong hatred for my body and for myself for quite a few years. So just trying to flip that in your head with the affirmations and things like that body love, body positivity, and hold yourself in to the highest esteem or degree, and then that will start transitioning everything else, because we take care of what we love.
Yes, I love it. And diet or healthy lifestyle is language that people hear every single day, and so many people struggle with weight or healthy. And I wouldn't even say weight, because there are people that are on the low end and the high end of weight, or the optimal weight, but they struggle with being healthy. It's not the weight they're carrying, it's the foods they're eating, or that may not be taking weight off or putting weight on, but it's not the optimal thing for your body to have the energy and focus.
Yeah. But what we hear and what we see a lot of are, the industries, to make the money, it's, get your allergy testing done, get your, all of these other things that are out there, to of course make this happen as fast as possible, right? But it's all there, the bottom line is that it's a continuing cycle, and people get lost in the weeds of gut health. Well, my gut's all messed up, so I have to take these probiotics, and I have to do this over here, and I have to do that, and then the DNA and the ketones and the all of these other things, when honestly what they just need to start looking at is the food that they are already eating. Because I eat food that I love, but the food that I love loves me back. And so most of the time, you know, and I already know the things that I'm not going to, you know, but do I still have that stuff? Yes, I do. But I also know, and I know the consequences of, but I also flip it back to what it is that I normally eat. Yes, I'll have a cinnamon roll. Yes, I'll have pizza and beer. Yes, I'll have those kinds of things. And then I'll have a day or two where I'm like, ugh. And then I'll just get back to my normal eating because I don't want to stay there. I don't want to feel like that. And so we're more after the feeling than we are after anything else.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on, Laurie. Thanks everybody for being here and watching. Do me a favor, somebody needs to hear Laurie's message. Somebody is struggling right now with their body image and how they feel about themselves. And Laurie just might be their answer to a prayer. So if you would do me a favor and like and share this with your timeline, let's get the word out about Laurie and how she can help you or a friend or a family member to overcome that icky feeling of who they are. So thank you everyone for being here. If you are the spouse or a veteran and own a business, please reach out to me because I would love to possibly highlight you on a Military Mondays. So with that, everyone, have a fabulous week and I will see you next Monday on Military Mondays. Bye, everyone.
Bye.